Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes rundown for The Great Wall. Now, The Great Wall is a little bit of an odd duck because this is a movie produced by China intended for American consumption as well. It's tailored toward American sensibilities. It has American actors in it, Matt Damon and Willem Dafoe being their biggest names. And yet it is still very Chinese in its sensibilities and very much, arguably, a propaganda piece. Why did I go to see it? Well, the trailer had a lot of monsters in it. And I'm a kind of guy who likes a lot of monsters. I know that there are many people out there in the internet land that saw this trailer and heard the premise of this movie and said, "This sounds dumb. This looks dumb. It sounds dumb. I don't want to see this." But as someone who is a big fan of stupid genre monster action, I went into this hopeful because I wanted to see Matt Damon jump off a wall and kill some monsters in a really improbable, silly, over-the-top way. And even with those expectations, okay, even giving the movie the benefit of the doubt and meeting it on its own terms, I personally felt pretty let down by the experience of watching this movie. It starts out with maybe one of the worst CG shots in the whole movie. Where you kind of pan in from space to show and pan up to the Great Wall, and the Great Wall looks faker than it ever looks in the movie. And the special effects here are not top notch. Like, you've seen better special effects, but they're not awful for most of the movie. For some reason, they just, right up front, they just throw this really plasticky CG looking Great Wall thing at you as they're introducing the movie. And it's interesting, they start out the movie with the they talk about the Great Wall was built over so many years and this and this and this, and there are many stories of its of why it was built. Some of them are true, some of them are legend. This is a legend. And you gotta respect the movie for coming out and telling you that it's not true right off the bat. I mean, most movies don't do that, you know? You go into Godzilla and you're thinking, what if this is real? They didn't tell me. There's no scene at the beginning. There's no text on the screen telling me in the beginning, guys, Godzilla's not real. We just want you to know, calm down. This giant monster did not literally attack San Francisco. I know you are out of the news loop because you're a cord cutter, but it would have hit the front page of Reddit, okay? Trust us. You would have heard about it if this was true. It's not true. All right, we're just sit back and enjoy the movie. And most movies don't do that for you, right? And so you're sitting there stretching out thinking, is this real? Is it not real? And then it turns out not to be real most of the time, except for those dumb documentary things. So that was nice that they come right off the bat and tell you about it, that not being real. We jump right in to Matt Damon's character and the people traveling with him. They're on the run from some guys who are after them for reasons that we're not 100% sure of. They're not supposed to be in China, essentially. Matt Damon is we'll call him a Westerner. I think probably he really stands in for Americans in general in the sort of overarching mythology of the Great Wall, but obviously Americans at the time would have been Native Americans, Indian type people, so we wanted somebody white, we wanted somebody speaking English, so we get Matt Damon doing a weird accent, and it must be an artifact of the Chinese directing. That's all I can think of that would make any sense for why Matt Damon is doing this accent, because it doesn't sound like Matt Damon. I watch a lot of Bollywood movies, and not a lot, I watch some Bollywood movies, and one of the things that you'll notice is they'll have people speak English in those movies, but it doesn't sound right. Like, you still kind of want to read the subtitles because of how un-English it sounds. It's not even someone speaking English with an accent, it's someone saying English words that doesn't actually intend for them to being understood as English words. And there's a layer of that to Matt Damon's character in this that's just baffling. And all the more so because, especially towards the beginning of this movie, there are some legitimately good lines that he trades back and forth with his partner in crime, who are there in China trying to steal this gunpowder, right? And they just sort of get sucked into this whole Great Wall nonsense where the Great Wall is being attacked by alien monsters. And I don't get what the choice there was. I don't know if the director told him, we want you to make this kind of accent. We don't want any kind of Bostonian or anything. It needs to be the most generic American-ish sounding accent you can possibly do. But it comes off as really a little bit awkward. But his story is that he's in China. He's looking for this gunpowder, black powder. China's the first ones to invent that, and the West obviously wants to get their hands on it because, hey, cool weapons of war, right? And he's just sort of, I guess, been stumbling across the continent, hoping that he'll run into somebody who has some at some point. And in his travels, he happens across a monster that attacks at the camp where they're at, and he manages to kill. He keeps the arm, which is just a boss move. He like cuts the arm off of this monster, and it sort of like flops away and dies, and he keeps it. And he's like, I'm gonna go show this to somebody and find out what the thing is that I killed, because I'm awesome. I'm Matt Damon. There's a lot of promise in this movie to start out with. Of course, he runs into the Great Wall and finds out that they are preparing for an assault by this huge army of these sort of reptilian-looking monsters. And here's where the Great Wall almost is actually a pretty great movie from the standpoint of fun genre fare. It's putting aside the weird acting choices, right? Because we can accept that with Cool Monsters. Putting aside the sort of questionable CG, it reaches its peak, I would say, here close to the beginning. We see all of these forces marshaling against this invasion. And then the invasion happens, and there's a great sort of ballet of attacks against these monsters as the monsters are attacking the wall. And you have this sort of cool shot from the trailers where the ladies are jumping off the top of the wall down with like bungee cords and spinning around and doing gymnastics and like stabbing the monsters with spears, and some of them getting eaten. And it's a really cool action dynamic. But even here, at the best that the movie has to offer, it's hampered because you have essentially you have two monsters. And only one of them is ever really directly a threat. You have this sort of generic, almost generic. There's a cool thing in that it has eyes on its shoulders, and that's neat. Like, that's a cool design choice. It has a head, but the head doesn't see, right? There's eyes on the shoulders, and boy, well, if you love seeing monsters get stabbed in the shoulder eyes with arrows and spears, this is the movie for you, because you're gonna see a lot of that. And the monsters, when they're one-on-one, aren't too bad. Like, they're pretty cool. And I'm not even going to blame the special effects here. That's not the main issue. The main issue is that there are so many of them that the threat just becomes this essentially homogeneous pile of ant things, like piling up to get to the Great Wall, World War Z style. And it was okay in World War Z to a point, because that wasn't all that you saw. Like, generally you were down closer to the action and you got a little bit more. I don't hate World War Z. I enjoyed that movie. And so I think that it's a cool dynamic to show, but this is a lot of the times when the monsters are on screen, they're in these just giant piles climbing all over each other. And it sort of loses its impact because they're not super interesting to start with, and what difference there is in their design just gets lost because there's so many of them. There's also a larger version of this monster that's like just acts as a shield for the queen. This is one of those deals where there's one thing that controls everybody, and if you can kill it, then it shuts down the whole army, and you've seen that shtick before. Again, we could write it off as, okay, genre fare, fine, but it is a little bit tired at this point. And the more disappointing part is that those monsters don't really do anything much. They just huddle around the queen. I don't think we ever see them directly attack anybody. We don't see them do anything but protect the queen. Why not just make the queen like a turtle or something? Like have a big Gamera thing. Here's the benefit to giant monsters is you can have different ones, right? Why not have, if you're gonna do, and it's not like you can't have a big assault force, but in Lord of the Rings, let's say, you have Peter Jackson, yeah, there's a lot of orcs, but the orcs are, especially once you zoom in on them, pretty distinct, right? You'll see like this orc has this kind of messed up face paint, and this guy has a crack in his helmet, and like they're all different creatures, and they have like different types of things they're going to throw at you. They'll have different like bigger orcs and like giant elephant monsters and all that stuff. As you go further into the films, there's a variety there. And here you just have the one monster essentially just piling up against the wall. It's a little bit disappointing. And it doesn't stop there because the film doesn't even take advantage of all these great monsters that it has. After that first initial battle, there is a lot of time spent talking. And there's, I absolutely hate the talking because there's something admirable in this. I called it propaganda earlier, and I think that's somewhat true, but maybe in a good sense. This movie sort of drives home this lesson about, acting collectively and acting for the good of the greater, humanity versus acting in your own self-interest. And Matt Damon's character is very much a stand-in for the lone American hero, sort of in it for himself, greedy to a point. I mean, he actually does have some sympathy, and they do craft him pretty well. They spend a lot of time talking about this stuff, though. There's a lot of dithering that happens between Matt Damon's character and the main Chinese lady who eventually becomes the general of the army, about what trust is and how important it is and how they're different. And there's also a lot of differing between Matt Damon and the other two American guys, or not. I don't know if is Willem Dafoe an American. I don't. The white guys. Him and Willem Dafoe and the other guy that he brought with him, who I think is in Game of Thrones, but I forget which character he plays. They're like arguing about whether they should take the dynamite, and Matt Damon is, I don't know if I should do this anymore. I want to help these people out. Should I help them out or should I act for myself? Which is admirable to a point, and to another point, I really respect this kind of communication, right? I like that China as a culture, right, as a government, has sent this weird blockbustery message in a bottle to Americans saying, hey, this is how we feel. This is what our ideals are about. It's about acting together. It's about trust. It's about not being in your, acting completely in your own self-interest. And we're going to show you a guy who's not, we're not going to portray him as a douchebag. We're not going to look down on him. He is a hero in a sense. He can do things, but he still has some things to learn. And in a fairly divisive political environment, the idea of reaching out to someone who has a different point of view than you and saying, hey, here's a character like you. And here are some characters like us that have our points of view. And here is you seeing our point of view a little bit closer to the way we would do it. It's not in your face. It's not like a bombastic. It's the most civil political discourse I've heard in a while, especially in this increasingly divided sort of political arena that we're in. And it's very nice. But the problem is there's way too much of it. There's just so much of it. We don't need that much. There's so much time spent on all of this dialogue and all of this kind of introspection and navel gazing that we don't get to really have fun with the monsters. And even if the monsters were great, they don't, like, we don't get enough time with them. There's a final battle which has some cool visuals and some cool ideas, but ultimately it just falls kind of flat. And that's super disappointing, guys, from my perspective, because I like giant monsters. I wanted this to be a giant monster kind of movie. And I understand that maybe the physics of how the Great Wall is set up would preclude the ability. I mean, you can't have Godzilla come against the Great Wall because he would just punch it and it would fall over. But we could have had something more than these hordes of dog ant lizards that were attacking in so much mass that you don't really ever identify with them. And as admirable as I find the attempt to communicate a sort of political message, and also, you know, the whole sticky wicket of, okay, we're gonna tell you a lesson about how you shouldn't be greedy, but we really do want to make this as palatable to capitalism as possible. So we're gonna make this a big blockbuster movie and try to make a lot of money. All kinds of like weird cross-purpose things there that you don't know exactly how to unpack all of that in a rational way, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But even all of that considered, it ends up being kind of boring. And that is not okay. In a movie about stupid giant monsters attacking the Great Wall of China, it can be dumb. It can be bad. It can't be boring. You can't do that to me. You can't do that to the audience. You got to try harder, China. I believe in you. I'm on board with the concept, but this was not the right avenue. Like, come back at me with some Japanese style Godzilla stuff, you know, spin your own thing that way. It's cool that you're finally branching out. You're the biggest market in the world. It absolutely makes sense that you want to make movies that your people want to see, and there are loads and loads of Chinese people who play a big part of this movie. That is a smart business decision, and absolutely makes sense that China is finally taking this step after several years of, you know, really pushing Hollywood to make their movies more Chinese. Now the Chinese are making their movies and they're making them very Hollywood. I'm interested to see this experiment go forward, but it's got to be better than this. And I mean, yeah, Hollywood makes crappy movies too, all the time. We 100% get that. But roll the dice again, China. Keep giving it a shot. Keep being crazy and wacky and swinging for that blockbuster fence. And I think you're on the right track. I really do. But you haven't pulled into the station yet, okay? Anyway, guys, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already done that, and I will see you guys next week with something else.